The most common mistake or pitfall that I see a lot of practices make is an outdated website. Quite often people tend to just kind of put a website together that is more informational. Whereas we approach design and we approach website building kind of, how do we address these questions? How do we kind of guide people and visitors through the design, through the practices, processes, and services to kind of tailor that experience for them?
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 371 of the Practice of Therapy podcast, and I'm Gordon Brewer. So glad you're with me on this journey, and so glad you're tuned into the podcast. Hope you'll take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And also, we have a YouTube channel. If you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/YouTube, you can watch the video of this podcast or this episode there. We've started capturing that and putting them up there for people, and hoping to do more with that. So be sure to go over there to practiceoftherapy.com/YouTube and be sure to like and follow that particular podcast in addition to where you might be listening to this podcast here. So be sure and check it out. Looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Justin on. And Justin is the founder of Inflow Designs. And Justin has created a business in which he helps specifically therapists with their branding. And this was a really fascinating conversation. I think one of the things that we might not put a lot of thought into in the beginning stages of our practice is what our brand is going to be. And then when you think about brands, I think about things like Coca-Cola and Target and all of those kinds of companies that we know very well what their brand is. And so we kind of talk about how you might create some of that for yourself in your own practice. But before we get to my conversation with Justin, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft network, along with some words from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hi there, I'm Julie Harris. I'm an accountant and I'm the host of the Therapy for Your Money podcast. In the podcast, we talk about all things money and finance, specifically for therapists in private practice. You see, my accounting firm, Green Oak Accounting, specializes in working with therapists in private practice. That's all we do at this point. And over the years, we've learned so many tips and tricks for how to make the financial side of private practice work better. After all, we've seen under the hood of hundreds and hundreds of private practices. So in the podcast, I share lots of financial tools and tips and mindset shifts to help you have a profitable private practice. Therapy for Your Money is part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts, a network of independent podcasters just like me. So head over to therapyforyourmoney.com to hear episodes on topics like growing your practice, making more money without necessarily working harder, weathering the ups and downs of a practice, and so much more. Come join me at therapyforyourmoney.com.
Ready to upgrade your practice from a rusty bicycle to a shiny new sports car? Buckle up, because TherapyNotes is here to turbocharge your journey. It's the comprehensive practice management system you've been craving. Equipped with everything you need to navigate patient records, schedule seamlessly, host remote sessions, craft detailed notes, and tackle insurance billing with ease. And guess what? It's your trusty sidekick, available whenever and wherever duty calls. Picture having more quality time with your clients, all thanks to this digital assistant that never clocks out. Here's the kicker. It's Gordon approved, so you can trust it's the real deal. Bid farewell to paperwork headaches and embrace a new era of efficiency and top-tier care. Ready to level up your private practice game? Swing by practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and punch in promo code GORDON for 2 months on the house. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really happy for you to get to know Justin on. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this conversation. And Justin's company is called Inflow, and we're going to talk about that. And I think you'll find it very interesting just thinking about your branding and how they help people with that. But Justin, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Absolutely. So I started off my design career, like most graphic designers, as a freelance graphic designer. I started working in the local Detroit music scene. So I would do album art, posters, merchandise, that kind of thing for all different kinds of brands and even some small local businesses. And then from there, I ended up moving on to working for a company for about 8 to 9 years. And, I started there as a graphic designer. And I slowly kind of worked my way up to becoming senior designer and then art director and then eventually the creative director. During my time there, I learned a lot. I met some really incredible and very talented people along the way. And at this point, I would actually like to mention that I'm really proud to say that I just closed that chapter of my career last September. Mm-hmm. One of the major reasons why I decided to leave was simply because my own struggles with mental health. The environment I used to work at was a little bit toxic. And so, that really started to erode me away as a person, just both mentally and physically. And so I started Inflow kind of on the side with the hope that, it could be a way out. And with the love and support and encouragement and guidance and motivation and more love and, everything positive from my wife, who is a clinical psychologist herself, I gained the confidence and the clarity to try to start Inflow and to really, put myself into that position and take that risk to better myself. Last year, we went to APA in 2024 in Seattle, which turned out to be an enormous success. And so successful that I ended up resigning 2 weeks after we got back. So that's kind of how Inflow really got started, and that's kind of how Inflow is continuing to grow and to continue to kind of move forward right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's I love that story, and thanks for your vulnerability and just talking about your own struggles. That's great. So
yeah, I've had the wonderful privilege of working with some of the nicest people I've ever met doing Inflow so far, and Inflow is relatively new, but the people I've met along the way so far have been just awesome and amazing. And so, for me to be able to do the work that I'm so passionate about doing, that I genuinely, love to do, it's not only just seeing, what the impact of design can do for a practice, but, being a part of that impact, being a part of that journey for all these different practices and all these different stages that they're at. And by extension, the community that they serve, it's really powerful, and it feels like a privilege for me to be able to do this.
Right. Yeah. And I know in just my conversations with people and the consulting I do and that sort of thing, that coming up with a name for a practice is really one thing that's, I think, important to branding. But I guess maybe just kind of walk us through just, as you think about branding and why it's important and that whole aspect of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Branding is such an important part, like you said. It's very deep. you can kind of see branding as, it's the aesthetics. It's making sure things look nice. It's making sure everything is kind of aligned with the brand. But it goes so much deeper than that, right? Branding, it allows you to tell your story. It allows you to put, your experiences, your unique values, your journey to where you started from and all the little moments that kind of got you to where you are right now, running your own private practice and growing. Branding allows us to kind of take all that and almost digitizing it in a way and kind of infusing that into every aspect that comes out of your practice, right? From your letterhead to your website to your logo to the color choices that we make, that should all be consistent. That should all kind of relate back and help kind of tell your story visually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so, in thinking about, one of the things, one of the books that I recommend to people is Donald Miller's The Story Brand. You might be familiar with it or not, but anyway, when you mentioned just telling your story, I think that's an important piece to it all. You want to just maybe kind of walk us through how you work with people and just kind of that whole branding process.
Yeah, so our approach to the design and kind of working with clients is I would like to say a little bit more loose in the sense that, I understand that every practice is different. And so every practice owner is different and their stories are different and, their goals for their practice are different. And, the stages that they're at in their practice is going to be different. And so we like to kind of start off by just simply having a conversation, just getting to know them, getting to know, what are their goals, what are their values, what exactly are they trying to do, and with that information and that kind of backstory, we're able to kind of then take a step further and really start to focus on, what their branding is going to look like, what they want to try to do, and then kind of where they want to be in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's starting with your why is what I always tell people is what's the underlying motivations for everything you do really within your practice in terms of the business side and the marketing side sort of thing. So yeah, so what sort of as you've done this work, what sort of kind of mistakes do you see people make in trying to get their message out and the branding and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I would say like the most common, I guess, mistake or pitfall that I see a lot of practices make is an outdated website. I think that, an outdated website, because a website is usually going to be kind of like one of the first interactions that a visitor will have with your practice. And so, making sure that your website is consistent, making sure your website is easy to navigate, making sure your website is intuitive as far as, what a patient or what a visitor may be kind of looking for at that particular moment in their journey on your website. Taking all that into consideration and kind of developing and designing a website that kind of addresses those, I think is a very powerful thing. And I see quite often people tend to just kind of put a website together that is more informational. Whereas, we approach design and we approach website building kind of, how do we address these questions? How do we kind of guide people and visitors through the design, through the practices, processes and services to kind of really kind of tailor that experience for them.
Right, right. Yeah, it's I've heard people speak of this in terms of when you go to a website, you want to kind of have a clear picture of what you should do when you get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of time, yeah, I think in our fields, people are looking for some kind of help with things, and that's again another tangent we could go on is the importance of creating a niche for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
of having a really kind of specific issue or thing that you, number one, enjoy helping people with, but also something that people see you as an expert in. And so that attracts people, I think, more by having that. And
Yeah, having
then,
having a
yeah.
nice, clear, focused goal, a clear,
Mhm.
focused kind of mission for your practice and the group that you want to kind of communicate and work with. I think that's a very
Right,
powerful.
right. One thing that I think a lot of people maybe might be curious about is just thinking about with the whole branding piece, knowing kind of where to start in terms of maybe
Mm,
coming up with a logo, what colors to use, that sort of thing. What do
yeah.
you, yeah, what advice can you give around those things?
As far as, like I said, it really comes back to your story. I approach I approach design very much kind of trying to infuse, people's stories into the brand. So I would say, when it comes to the logo design, it really is kind of up to you and what you feel best represents you in your practice, right? It should be symbolic, but at the same time, it should also be relatable, and it should also be kind of appropriate for the goals and the values of your practice.
Mhm.
I would say, yeah, it's a little hard to really be able to pinpoint kind of like where to start with that with the logo design. It's
Mhm.
very much like just kind of what resonates with you, what would resonate with
Uh-huh.
that also resonates with your audience, with the target, with your community.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of
And I know
building
that.
from it.
Yeah. And I think, thinking, I know, like we mentioned before, people thinking about what to name their practice. There's lots of different directions you go. And one of the things I would say in my own experience that I did well early on, there's been a lot of mistakes I've made along the way, but one of the things was in naming my practice, and that the name really helped with my SEO. When you mentioned the online presence, I mean, Kingsport, Tennessee is the city I'm in, and so it's Kingsport Counseling Associates, and so
Mhm.
that I feel like, fortunately, that name was available when I went into all of this, and so yeah, and so that's helped a great deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Taking into consideration as everything we do nowadays is online. So, at least being cognizant and being aware that, all the decisions that we make for your practice, for your design kind of relates back to SEO. It takes into consideration, how will this look like on Google? How will this look like on different search engines? And how do we sort of how do we make sure that we're doing the right thing to really optimize the way your practice is found?
Yes, yes. So what are some of the what would you say are some of the key elements to that as far as what you've found so far
For
of
like for SEO.
yeah, 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 like SEO and just helping people find your practice.
Yeah, SEO is a very big one. There's certain things that we can kind of do on the website that will really help to basically allow the search engine to quickly find you. So, simple things such as kind of making sure that your file names are named in a way that SEO will find it, right? Even if it's a simple icon for like a phone icon for your contact information, making sure that you're naming those files in a way where SEO will be able to pick up on that and use it is really important. Also, using alternative texts, kind of using meta tags, stuff like that on the back end to make sure that, basically you want to make sure every element of your website is visible, not just what people see, is,
Yeah.
is a really good way to kind of approach that. There's SEO is a pretty deep and complicated sort of subject. And so we do as much as we can with what we can, but there's definitely more specialized companies out there that can really dig into the code of your website that will then help your practice get found a little bit easier.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a whole top, as you're right.
Yeah.
SEO, search engine optimization, is a whole topic in and of itself. But
Mm.
yeah, so with Inflow, tell folks how you work with people and how maybe they can get started, and what that looks like.
So yeah, so we like I said, we genuinely love to work with our clients. Working with our clients and working in the healthcare field has been such a privilege. And we really like to try to get to understand our clients, get to understand what their story is, what their goals are, and try to infuse and incorporate that into the designs that we create for them.
So if somebody were to get started with you, what would that look like for them besides contacting you,
Yeah.
obviously?
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So
yep.
what?
So we would just set up a quick meeting. We would kind of discuss kind of what we're trying to do, what the goals are, what we're trying to achieve. And then the design process is relatively straightforward. We will come up with a couple different sort of initial concepts, initial designs based off of what I think would be a good direction based on what you think is a good direction, and some sort of combining the two into into a hybrid sort of design. And then from there, we just kind of refine, right? We just take a look at all the designs we have. We really like, we can decide we really like this direction and this direction. And then from there, we just refine until we're happy with a very consistently designed brand.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us about some of the people, or you don't necessarily have to disclose things, but I mean, some of the projects you've worked on that you've really felt really good about.
Yeah, we work with a lot of new practice owners. These are people who have either worked at organizations and are kind of branching off, or people that are just getting their career started. Like I said, I had the privilege of working with some of the nicest people, and I'm really proud of the fact that I worked with some clients who we were able to really define and refine their brand and really come up with a visual identity for them that is very representative of who they are and their approach to therapy.
Yeah. So tell folks about the best way to get in touch with you and how they can maybe get started in starting this conversation for themselves.
They can visit our website. It's going to be inflow-designs.com. And then on there's going to be contact information and a couple forms that they can fill out to kind of get started, as well as our pricing and kind of the different services that we offer.
Right,
one of the things that, one of the things that we're really proud of is our transparent pricing structures. So, when you first start working with us and in the first meeting, you'll know right away what the cost of the project will be. There won't be any sort of, hidden fees or any sort of surprise, add-ons at the very end. What the price that we tell you in the beginning is going to be the price that you work with throughout the project.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary for help people to get to that easily. And Justin, I'm so glad you joined us, and hopefully we will have more conversations here in the future just about branding and how people can be helped with all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Well, a big thanks to Justin for joining me on the podcast, and hope this gave you some things to think about and improving your brand and just thinking about how you're reaching your potential clients. As we kind of talked about a little bit, was one of the things that I think is real important for any practice is to have a really good website. In other words, one that is appealing to people, and also that they know what to do when they get there to your website. And so be sure and check out Justin's things and at Inflow Designs. And if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/inflow, you can find out more about his company and what they offer, particularly for mental health providers like those of most of you that are listening to this podcast, or really any sort of allied health field that is in private practice. So again, thanks to Justin for joining me. I'd love for you to check out too, I didn't mention this at the beginning, mentalhealthwaretn.com. This is an online store that I've created with my friend Ashley. And in that store, what you'll find are all kinds of swag items and t-shirts and sweatshirt designs that are geared specifically to mental wellness and also addiction recovery, along with some great designs for mental health providers. If you're looking for your perfect LCSW shirt or your LMFT shirt, you can find it there. And so be sure and check that out. And also, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. As you've heard me say before, they are who I use in my practice, and I'm constantly impressed with all the features that they continue to add and just how they make it even easier for us to do what we do in our practice and not have to worry about the documentation side of things or even scheduling filing claims and all of that is in one platform. And so you can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And if you'll use the promo code just Gordon, Gordon, you can try them out for 2 months for free. So check them out. I think you'll be pleased with them. So thanks again for joining me on the podcast, or listening to the podcast rather. Do take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are now on YouTube, the video of this particular episode. And so you can watch us live, not live, but watch the recording of the conversation, which I think it's nice to see the faces, I think, a lot of times. So be sure to check it out. You can go to practiceoftherapy.com/YouTube and get to our YouTube channel with this particular podcast episode. And also there'll be links there to other podcasts in the Psychcraft network, and be sure and check them out as well. So again, folks, thanks for joining me. Looking forward to being with you again next week for another episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.